Hello, this is a presentation on South African cuisine and how cultural factors influence the food choices of South Africans within Australia and around the world. This presentation will be divided into 3 parts. Firstly, discussing the dominant factors that impact the eating habits of South Africans, such as social, cultural, environmental, and traditional factors. Then an explanation on the traditional foods that South Africans would consume or have access to in their country. Lastly, comparing the South Africans' cuisine to the Australian dietary guidelines. But first, general information on South Africa. South Africa is the southernmost country in Africa, and based on the latest United Nations estimates, South Africa currently has a population around 57 million, and about 80% of South Africans are sub-Saharan African origin, and the remaining 20% include Europeans, Asians, and Latinos. The food culture of South Africa is diverse and distinctive. There are many local cuisines such as ugali, which is the type of cornmeal porridge, bobotie, a mix of spiced minced meat and eggs, and the African spinach, morogo. South Africans generally eat maize porridge as the staple food, and meat and vegetables. In recent years, an increasing number of South Africans have chosen to immigrate, and Australia is one of the most popular immigrant destinations for South Africans. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics in 2016, as many as 178,000 South Africans live in Australia. Changes in the living environment have also brought about changes in diet. Although South Africans may not be able to find some African-specific ingredients in Australia, but there are many alternatives in Australia. For example, they can substitute ugali with cereal. Factors. The dominant factors that impact the eating habits of South Africans include social, cultural, religious, environmental, geographical, economical, traditional, and constitutional factors. Social factors. Dutch and British colonization has influenced South Africa's language, with English being one of its official languages. Because there are so many languages in the country, the government recognized 11 official languages in order to promote social cohesion and nation building, and most of its people can speak more than 2 languages. For South Africans, strong relationship to their family members, whether it's a close or distant family members, are important, and they are expected to care and support each other. Cultural factors. South Africa is called a rainbow nation. This term refers to the fact that the country's population is a combination of people from different countries with varying cultural practices and religions. Similar to Australia, it is a home to 2 recognized indigenous groups who are called Kwe and San, or San collectively. San group are hunters and gatherers, while the Kwe were pastors. Religious factors. South Africans follow different religion. Christianity is the largest religion in South Africa, but don't have any strict food laws. However, they are encouraged to avoid meat during Lent season, especially Good Friday. Large numbers of people in the country are Islam, which have strict food guidelines such as fasting from sunrise to sunset during Ramadan, not eating pork at all, and alcohol is not allowed. In Islam, the food is referred to as halal, which means the food is lawful to eat and it's religious law. Hinduism is also practiced in the country and consider cow as a sacred animal. As a sign of respect, followers of Hindu won't eat beef, also avoiding alcohol when seeking spiritual enlightenment. Judaism is a religion that follows strict food guidelines, and their food is referred to as kosher, which means that it has passed the Jewish food standard. Their food law ensures that there is no trace of blood on their meat. Pork is also not allowed, and meat and dairy cannot be eaten at the same time. Environmental factors. Climate. Just like the rest of the world, South Africa is also suffering from climate change. This greatly affects the poorer communities due to the lack of knowledge, causing them to not be able to find ways to cope with the changing environmental conditions. Their weather is erratic, with less rainfall, and drought causes less water supply for farming, mining. South Africa is one of the largest mining countries in the world, which mines minerals like gold. However, mining drains water, which affects the crops, and the wastage usually contains chemicals that can pollute and damage soil and the crops. Geographical factors. South Africa's land is subtropic and relatively dry, while some areas are desert. In arid and semi-arid land, cattle, sheep, and goats are raised, whilst farmers cultivate plants in arable land, which includes table grapes, citrus, vegetable, flowers, and avocados. Economical factors. Lack of food. The decrease in production of crop due to less water supply and drought have led to decreased food supply and increasing food cost. Black South African farmers that rely on farming as their main source of generating food can be affected by this. To combat the lack of food supply, the government provides food aid to its vulnerable communities, while some others rely on relatives for admittance and friends for help. Poverty. Poverty is still prevalent in the country, and studies found that there are many people who are lacking money to purchase food. The government has placed measures ensuring that disadvantaged people have access to basic needs. Constitutional factors. South African constitution states that its people have right to have adequate food by implementing policies in ensuring food security. Various government agencies work together in creating food security and food safety. Department of Agriculture and Forestry and Fisheries function in ensuring food security for the country. Water and sanitation ensures that the water sources are managed, whilst Nutrition Society of South Africa performs scientific studies that promotes nutrition and well-being of its people. Traditional factors. South Africa had major racial issues in the past due to European colonization, and because of this, these national days celebrate freedom, including Human Rights Day, Freedom Day, Youth Festival. During Heritage Day, they celebrate their heritage, language, and food. As most of its population are Christians, they celebrate Christmas as well with their families. Explanation. Consumption. The average daily food consumption of South Africa is approximately 6,500 kilojoules a day. The average person requires 8,800 kilojoules a day. On average, it is broken up into breakfast consisting of 1,800 kilojoules, lunch has an intake of 1,500 kilojoules, and the remaining 3,150 kilojoules is consumed in supper or dinner. Other major food groups consumed by South Africans include approximately 61 kilograms of wheat, 58 kilograms of meat, 7.1 kilograms of bananas, 2.6 kilograms of sweets and cakes, and 282 cans of sugary drinks per year. Cuisine in South Africa. A staple breakfast in South Africa contains of millipap, also known as pap or maize porridge. It is often eaten plain or mixed with cheese, milk, sugar, or butter. The average lunch in South Africa is made up of a quarter loaf of bread, normally served with leafy vegetable mix called morogo, also known as African spinach. Pap is again with dinner along with morogo and a cheap cut of meat. The most common choice of protein is often chicken feet or mopani worms. On special occasion, rice is often swapped out with millipap as well. Accessibility. The accessibility of food in South Africa has become more readily available in the past years. Studies from 2011 show that starvation has declined approximately 10% since 2002. In 2011, starvation has dropped to 11.5% from 23.8% in 2002. Though there has been a vast decline in starvation, there are still 21.1% of households that struggle with accessing food, and usually the families that live in urban areas are the ones that make up that 21.1%. Accessibility in Australia. Though Australia is a very multicultural country, the availability of traditional South African foods can be limited. Although there are a few specialty stores in major cities in Australia that do sell more difficult food items. Most of the daily meal items are available from your local supermarkets or butcher, and items such as maize porridge and chicken feet are popular in Australian cuisine as well. Though not every item can always be brought, but there are many substitutions for these items. For example, items like morogo, African spinach, could be substituted for mixed lettuce or spinach, and millipap can always be substituted for porridge. A cultural Asian. South Africa cuisine has been influenced by many different cultures. Some dishes were influenced by other cultures, including the South African curries, which were influenced by the British Empire. One of the most iconic dishes, Cape Malay, were influenced by the Dutch. Comparison. The Australian Dietary Guidelines provide advice about the types and amount of foods that should be ingested daily for each person's individual health and well-being, as it is the types and amounts of food and drinks that is consumed daily that are important for a person's health. Good dietary choices must be made so everyone can enjoy a good lifestyle, so that each person can feel, look, and enjoy life longer, getting enough of the essential nutrients daily, and also reducing the risk of chronic health problems. The recommendations are scientific-based evidence developed through quality research. The main reason for comparisons. The idea is to compare South African cuisine to the Australian Dietary Guideline to show the similarities and differences between the two and the possible complications the cuisine has. This comparison is aimed to demonstrate flaws in the South African cuisine and to determine if the cuisine meets the nutritional needs of a meal for a person, and to understand the possible health implications the cuisine has if it was eaten regularly. Dietary guideline. The key to having a healthy diet is to have a variety of nutritious foods from each of the food groups, which are vegetables, fruits, grain, meats, dairy, fats, and plenty of water. The Australian Dietary Guidelines suggest that to have a healthy diet, each person requires a number of 5 to 6 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit as a part of their daily intake. Vegetables and fruits are needed in a person's daily diet because it provides the essential nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, fibers, and much more. In terms of grain, the guidelines suggest that the minimum number of serves should be around 6 to 7. Grain includes bread, rice, pasta, etc., and wholemeal are preferred as they provide more fiber, vitamins, and minerals than refined grain. For meats, the minimum recommended number of serves are 1 to 3 serves. The meats group consists of animal flesh, meat, eggs, nuts, and seeds, and provide nutrients, including protein, iron, zinc, and other minerals and vitamins. The guidelines' minimum recommended number of serves for dairy are 2 to 4 serves. The consumption of dairy is needed as it is a source of calcium and other minerals, protein, and vitamins, and it can reduce the risk and protect against chronic health disease and contribute to stronger bones. South African daily intake. The regular South African daily intake is approximately 6,500 kilojoules a day. The average person requires 8,800 kilojoules a day. South African cuisine usually consists of a grain porridge served with vegetables, beans, or meats, as their cuisine is enriched with fiber. Though different areas of the country will have different diets for different reasons, what is considered as the usual South African cuisine will be compared to the Australian Dietary Guideline, as different areas have stark contrasts between each other but similar at their core. As poorer areas usually have grain-based diets consisting of mostly maize and bread, lacking in fruit and vegetables. Most households are able to buy enough grain for daily consumption, however their diets are lacking in fruits and vegetables and dairy due to their high prices and lack of availability of these food groups in poorer areas. Meat consumption has increased, with South Africans consuming significantly more meats, fats, and oils than the past, but it does not surpass the 3 servings that is referred to in the guideline. Due to convenience and indulgence, the increase in consumption of packaged foods and sugary beverages is also a concern. Overall, the South African food consumption has shifted towards an overall increase in sugary beverages, processed and packaged foods, increased intake of meat and animal source foods, and a shift away from vegetables and fruits. Compared to the Australian Dietary Guideline, the usual South African cuisine would meet the minimum 6 to 7 servings of grain and 2 to 4 serves of meat a day. However, the usual cuisine is lacking in terms of fruits, which has a minimum recommended servings of 2, vegetables with minimum recommended servings of 5 to 6, and dairy with a minimum serving of 2 to 4. The health implications of a diet lacking of fruit, vegetables, and dairy are nutrition deficiency, digestive issues, chronic health conditions, weight gain, and overall health problems. Also, considering that the cuisine is 6,500 kilojoules a day, which is less than the average person required intake of 8,800 kilojoules a day, this could mean further health implications such as nutrition deficiency, underweight, malnutrition, stunting, and starvation. Conclusion: the presentation introduced South Africans in their diet and cuisine, discussed the dominant factors that influence the food choices of South Africans, also explained the dietary habits of South Africans, and lastly compared the South African cuisine to the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. In conclusion, South African cuisine and their diets and factors affecting their diet were analyzed. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you.